right? And so we will share the link once we've uploaded this. Kind of trying something new this year for those that indicated so when you registered, putting the recording into our learning management system, the ARM Academy LMS, if you will. And so we'll provide instructions to basically just log in, and we'll have a course. They call it a course in there, but really it's just for this one webinar. And that's where you can watch the recording again. And also, if you just go in and mark that as complete, it'll spit out a certificate for you. So you'll be able to see kind of all the webinars that you participated in with us throughout the year. Going forward, if you did not, of course, want an account in there, we also just have that on YouTube. We'll be sure to email everyone that link. So, all right. Well, without further ado, we'll dive in here to the topics today. I've got a few slides. We'll also be diving into ARM a little bit when we're digging in. Kind of the first topic is just to cover some kind of X's and O's of getting the ARM software going again. And so if you're looking at, hey, I got a new computer over the off season, or we just purchased a new one for this year, just kind of what do I do? And so we have a process where you can take a lot of your settings, your personal list, things you've done within your ARM on that old computer, and bring them to the new computer. So you're not starting with a totally blank slate. And so we'll kind of cover exactly how to do that here on the next slide. But in short, we kind of call that migration, bringing that information over to a new computer. And then kind of the other step you want to do is also manage your activation. So the ARM license is linked online. And so when you're done with the old computer, under the help menu, you can deactivate this ARM. So that basically just says, I'm all done with this computer. I want to move and activate a new one to be my main ARM machine. And so on that old computer, once you've done that, you don't have to uninstall ARM and totally get rid of it entirely. That ARM will just keep running as a read-only. So then if something were to happen to that new computer, you could always swap activations back or whatever you might have to do there. If you did like upgrade your computer, sometimes it might still be in that same machine, but maybe IT gave you a new hard drive or something like that. Sometimes those types of changes in hardware, even if it's the same physical unit there that hasn't left your desk, ARM might give you a message kind of like this here. And basically ARM reads the hardware, and if something is new enough, different enough in there, it thinks this is a new machine. So if that happens, just send us an email, just in our support box, and basically we just go in and clear out that old activation. And then when you log in again, ARM will hook up this new computer, even if it really is the same thing, to your license. So that, and that can also apply if you have your old computer, is totally not functioning, and you don't have, access to it. Same thing, just send us an email with your license number, and we can kind of hook you up and get that cleared off. So that way, whatever computer you're looking at right now, ARM will link. Finally, if you have like a new employee, there's a few things you can do. Number one, if you do have multiple licenses, multiple activations, then kind of in your company or just even under your own name, we can look up the computer names of what has been linked to those licenses. So sometimes we find out, oh, this one hasn't been used since 2017. I bet you're not using it still. We can clear this off and have a new employee use that activation. So again, you can just let us know, send us an email, and we can look up those details and see if there is maybe an opening that you can recycle one of those activations essentially. Or of course, if not, we can get a new license if you want ARM on another computer. Another thing you could do is utilize that migration, which again we'll kind of dive into here soon, but use that actually instead of just on your same new computer, you could also use that to share that information with the new employee. And we'll show kind of how to do that here coming up next, but kind of wanted it as something to think about, because it's not always, I don't think we even advertise it as something you could do, but there really is no reason you couldn't use that tool as a way to share those settings, personal lists, things like that. And finally, just a quick plug, if you do have a new employee, to maybe send them to our LMS. So that by default, we have a 3-part tutorial video series that's really designed for somebody brand new to ARM. Just give them a high level information about ARM, how do you set up a protocol, how do you work in the trial, and you're done. And so that can be a real nice way. It's about 2 hours of video playtime. After watching them, maybe if they have ARM, they can play with it, but it can be just a couple-day project to get them going with the software. So I have a shameless plug for that, to hopefully maybe save you some time so you don't have to sit next to them and explain how to do the basics. So they can kind of learn on their own. All right, so I've mentioned it several times. So let's actually kind of talk about this migration package. Again, really what we're doing here is on a computer where you've been using ARM for X number of years, you kind of compile different options, your personal list, whether it's your treatment product list that you're growing, or your soil details or contact lists, anything that you're kind of building up and adding your own information into those pick lists in ARM. All of that stuff will be kind of a shame to lose if you move to a new computer. And so this migration package allows ARM to go out and grab all of those files that have been changing and updating and put them into a single zip folder that then you can take to that new computer. So that's really where it originated as a nice transfer to get a new computer to be at the same spot as the old computer was. So then you can ship the old computer down the road and keep working just as you had been. As I mentioned, actually, though, you can also use that tool for a new employee. Instead of getting rid of the computer where you generated this migration package from, that can still keep running, and you could just share that package with a new ARM and load that in, and all of those lists and things like that will come into that new computer. And now both of you have a similar kind of starting point there, that you can get them kind of up and going with some of those lists. And finally, kind of specifically for today's theme of getting yourself ready for the season, even if you are still using the same computer this year, I would encourage you to create a migration package really as a rollback point. So if something were to happen to your computer mid-season, if a validation list somehow gets corrupted, and something goes wrong and there's an error, the migration package can be a nice way to roll back to what you have right now. And so really, the goal would be to kind of take a bookmark stamp of what you've got before the season starts, in case anything goes awry, or you have to get a new computer because your old one breaks or something mid-season. You'll have this starting point. And so I just toggle over to my ARM to create this package. It's under the Utilities menu. We migrate studies and settings to a new computer. That's the command here to really start. And so kind of the first step is, where do you want to save this path, or this migration package? What path do we want to save it at? By default, it will use your ARM backup location. So if you have set an ARM backup before, you might not see this first question. In my case, my backup path was set to a D drive, and it seems that cannot be found. So if you did have a backup set, but it can't be found either, ARM will make sure to ask it. Pick a location where you want to save that to. And so I've got an SD card. It looks like it's listed as my E drive. That's probably why I can't find it. And so kind of the best practice here would be to save it to a separate drive that's not on your hard drive. Again, so if something does happen to your hard drive and you have to get a new computer, this package with this information will be somewhere else. So whether it's an SD card, if you have like a thumb drive that you just put in your computer right now, network location, can be another good location to save this backup. So that way it's not tied to the hard drive if something were to happen to your computer. The next step is, what components do you want to bring in to this package? And so by default, you'll always get the settings folder. That's not really an option here. It's automatically selected. Basically, that is your own settings, whether you're in tools, options, things like that you've configured as your own settings. That is tied to your particular license, just as far as kind of how the settings are identified. So if you had multiple ARM licenses on this computer that were using the program, they can all have their own settings. The only case that would really matter is if you use this package to have another user kind of share your list. Just so you know, those particular settings won't be shared. They're unique to each plugin. But really, the main focus, kind of the biggest advantage of the package would be the second option, the personalization of study definition files. So these are all of your personal lists, your product list, your contacts, all of those lists that are either empty or more or less empty in ARM when you very first start out, and then you're filling it in with your specific research details. It can take a long time to build up. And so really, it's great to save those. If we look at that tooltip, we can also see that your report sets, your views, your study rule sets, really anything that you save and create new within ARM since you first downloaded it really is kind of a part of this personalization of study definition 5. And so that's the big ticket item that you want to make sure to include in this package to bring over. Finally, you do have an option for your study data files. I don't think that's used very often. It would really only matter if, number one, you're moving to a new computer, and also if your data is on your local hard drive. Now, if you're saving it to OneDrive or Dropbox, something like that, it's a whole lot easier just to install OneDrive on the new computer. Or if it's all on the network, there's no need to copy it into this file to share somewhere else. So that one is less used, I would say, only if you have your files on your hard drive that it really would be necessary. So I'll click OK here, and now it's just a loading and essentially just going out onto my hard drive and grabbing those list files, report sets, all of those different things. And it is actually doing it for each of the customizations. So if you work with some of the global sponsors that have their own customized version of ARM, kind of the same thing happens for each of those customizations as well. So in my case, I've got each of them for testing, so it's taking a little bit longer since it has to do it for each one of those customization buckets, if you will. Normally, it would probably take a little bit less time here. But now it'll just kind of give you a nice confirmation, green is good, that everything was successful. And it just has some instructions if you are moving this to a new computer of exactly how to load it up on the new computer. And really that's just a matter of, taking that flash drive or SD card, wherever we save this information, bring that file over to the new computer and plug it in, and then in ARM, you can use the utilities and load migration package. And that'll bring all of those files that we saved here from this computer onto that new computer. So that's kind of a sales pitch for the migration package here. Really, I would encourage everyone to create one right now as kind of a bookmark at the beginning of the season, and stash that somewhere on the network, stash it on a flash drive, just to have it in case something does happen mid-season. We have a place we can roll back, so you wouldn't have to start totally fresh. Another good thing to do is make sure to have a backup path set. We mentioned that that's used in the migration package, but if you have not set one up before, under the Tools menu, you want to open up your options. And under the File tab of the options, the second one down here is the path for your backup. And so the backup really is useful for saving, obviously, backups of your files as you're working on them throughout the season. So essentially, when you have a backup path here set, then as you're in a protocol or as you're in a trial file, when you press the Save button, ARM, of course, saves the file, and it also saves a copy of that file into your backup location. And so this generates a history of previous versions of your file. So not only do you have a backup copy if, again, your hard drive crashes and your files were on your hard drive, you can have the backup, there was the latest copy you saved on the backup drive instead that you can get access to. But this also provides a history of your files, a previous versions list that can be really helpful if you went in and put data in the wrong file, and then you didn't realize it till the next day. You can always go back to the day prior's version of that file and roll back. Or if we see this every so often, if your files are on a network drive or a cloud service, and maybe your internet blips out just when you hit save and the file gets corrupted somehow. Well, then you can just roll back to the last version before that corruption happened. And so having a backup path here can be very, very helpful to kind of catch and be ready for some of those situations. It's just a matter of browsing. Again, we recommend, back when before COVID and we could travel to places, at our trainings, we would bring a little folder of SD cards. I have a picture of them on my PowerPoint slide here, just little thumbnail size memory cards that can be really handy because most computers have a slot for them, either the full SD size or they also make mini SDs. And it's just kind of nice because it's just a little slot that you put that card in. It doesn't stick out at all, and you can kind of totally forget about it. But it is then a drive separate of your hard drive. If your computer crashes, that SD card won't be hurt at all. So that's something we recommend. But again, also, a network location would work well, even just on Dropbox or OneDrive. Make a backup folder on there, so that way that's being synced to the cloud and is accessible somewhere else. So that's important to find something. Really, probably the best thing is separate of where your trial files are, to kind of have that duplication. And so if you choose something like this E drive here, then when you say OK, ARM will offer to, that's a different question. One of my tabs don't exist. Here's the question that it will ask. It'll say, ARM prefers to create a folder called ARM Backup, all kind of one word, so that way you can kind of recognize that folder as its own and not with any other file. So it will take this E drive and create this folder here. Now, I actually already had that folder there, so it'll just use that path, and we'll continue doing and creating backups. So the nice thing here is if I were to open up a file, I must have moved that file here. Let me open up the file. Okay. And we'll choose this one here. So then once you have your backup set, then when you're working on trials, working on protocols, and making whatever changes you might have, pick initiation date, or maybe I'll just choose appointments on here. Doesn't really matter. And then when you press save, it will save the trial and also save it in our backup. So now if I close this trial here, then if you need to get to those backups, those previous versions, that's done on the study list. And you just right click on that file and choose your previous version. And so here, this will show each time I worked on this file. So a couple of days ago, I had maybe first created and saved this file. And now today when I saved, it created another version. So you can go back to this version saved on the 9th. You can view the file. So in the case of being corrupted, you can make sure that you're not getting any crazy errors when you open that version. And then once you know that is the one you want, you can restore that from the backup, and then it will put it out where your file really is and use that copy instead. Finally, kind of the last reason for that backup that you'll want to set here to get going is that also auto-create this migration package for you each day as well. So when you close down your ARM each day, then at the very end, ARM will actually generate that migration package automatically to the backup. So even even as you're going through the season, then those lists and things will actually be built into your backup path each and every day. So that way you have the most latest if again something happens. All right, and while we're at this study list, this is kind of the next topic to show for kind of dusting things off and getting ready for the next year would be to prepare your study list. And so this is the dialog that displays when you first open up ARM. If you haven't used it before, it can be a little bit intimidating, but really all it is there's a running list of all of the different trials and protocols that you've opened and used in ARM. And that is the table down here. And the top portion really are just filters. So you can find and kind of build up the list to see what studies you've used. And so that's really all the study list is. It's a view of your file. And so kind of a common misperception, I think, sometimes with the list is that it's actually manipulating or moving or changing your files in ARM. So I think there is a general fear of playing around with this tool too much. But it really is just a list of files ARM has seen. It definitely doesn't change the actual files themselves on your machine. And so what you can do is train and teach ARM where to find files. And so that is done with the rebuild. And so there's a button in the corner called rebuild. You can also do this from the utilities menu and rebuild your study list. So chances are, if maybe you were brand new last year and now you've got all of your 2020 trials and protocols here in this list, and you're ready to maybe start fresh. Maybe I don't need to see all of those last year's files, and I really just want to see just this year's files, for example. What you can do then is let's rebuild your study list. And so we can basically tell ARM to go to a particular folder, whether it's on the network or on my computer, go to a particular folder and look up all of the trial and protocol files that you can find and put those in my list. So here, for example, if I wanted to zero in on, got my folder here for today's session. A lot of times I think people like to organize maybe by each year. So you'd have folders for each year, and then maybe within each folder, you'd have all of the, the different projects or maybe the different sponsors that you work with, however else you'd want to categorize those. But a lot of times maybe there's a separate folder for each year. that contains everything in each year. And so what you can do is, if I want to, forget about all of my 2020 files, and let's just start with just what I've created in 2021. So you can choose just that 2021 folder, and then have ARM search subfolders, so it can find files within that 2021, and underneath it'll look in all of the other folders within 2021 as well. And then you can choose the method for rebuilding. And so we can clear out whatever you have in your list currently, just clear it all out and start. You can also update the list if you wanted to. So if you liked what you had and you just want ARM to go and find whatever else is new out there, you can use update. But a nice way is just, if you want to start fresh, is let's clear the list. And so then it'll start with a totally empty list, and let's go find whatever files I have in 2021 folder. Be also useful if you're in a group with several ARM users that are all creating protocols or loading in trials that you might want to open up. You can always rebuild your list and have kind of see what other people have been adding without having to go choose and grab each one and opening them up yourself. Just rebuild to that path, and ARM will find any new files that have been added. So here now I've got just a few files that are all in that 2021 folder. And actually, if you go all the way to the right, really each column here is just another piece of information from that file. Can be useful to sort and filter for. And all the way to the right, the very last column in this long table is the study file path. So that can be handy to see exactly where these are. And sure enough, they are all the 2021 files. But if you'll notice, we didn't actually change any of the files themselves. We didn't delete the 2020 files. If I bring my folder over here, we've got my 2021 with the files that are in this list, but that doesn't mean that the 2020 files were removed at all. Simply, this list is just a view of what ARM has noted and has documented, if you will, what trials and protocols ARM has indexed for you that maybe you've opened up. So you can use that list, change that list. So right now you're maybe focused in on the 2020, but maybe later on somebody asks you, I'm trying to look back over the years and find how many, what studies have we done with this product or on this type of stuff. Well, you can simply rebuild your list. And now, instead of focusing just on 2020, let's move up one folder level and say, okay, well, instead of just 2020, let's get one higher level up so I can include all years worth of trials. And I can clear it out, or in this case, updating will all do really the same thing, because it's going to find those same files again anyway. And so it will grab all of the files that you have across those years and put them into your list. And now you could use study list to filter for crop type, filter for a certain treatment name, whatever it might be. Now we have a bigger list. Yours will probably be much bigger. I just kind of created these folders on the fly, so there's not a whole lot in there. But this list is bigger now because I have files from 2020 and 2021. And so then you could filter and say, yeah, we were looking for what we did with Super Stomp. And so you can leverage the filtering here in the study list to find which studies you had done on whatever criteria you're looking for. Really, the big thing being that you can just rebuild this list. It's just a view of the files. It's not gonna make them disappear from your hard drive or from your network if you change this list. All right, so that really covers both the migration and bringing in all of your settings, and then also leveraging that study list. refresh it, clear it all out, and start fresh. Once you open files, so with the 2021, maybe you haven't created any yet, so you might rebuild and the list is empty. All of that's just fine. Once you start creating or opening files, then it automatically gets added to the list once you've opened them up. So the next topic here then would be the merge. So this I think is maybe an underutilized feature in ARM, maybe partially because I think it might be named a little bit incorrectly. I think I would rather call it copy from is what I would maybe name it, because you're really not combining like two files together to create a new one, which is almost kind of what merge sounds like. But really what it is a tool to copy from another file. Or maybe a tongue-in-cheek term would be a save as with benefit. A lot of times I think people open up last year's protocol and just do a save as, and then start changing pieces of information for this year. Which there's nothing wrong with that. That certainly will work. It does create a totally separate file, which you could put in your 2021 folder and kind of get rolling that way. That's definitely a viable option. But the merge really, I think, can give you a more fine-tuned control of what information you want to bring in. Really, we'll kind of show how to utilize this tool, maybe to replace that save as action that you'd be tempted to do. Really, about the one downside to the save as is you have all these references to last year. And so if you miss a date reference or overlook something that should have been cleared out because this year we're not doing it type of thing, then that can be a little problematic to have these things hiding in the background that maybe it's not visible on your screen right now. Maybe you just forgot about it. Using the merge instead will let you choose specifically what do I want to copy? What do I want from last year's protocol to copy into this new one? So just to kind of demonstrate that, let's just create a new protocol for 2021, and we'll say it is very similar to what we did last year. And so I'll just create a new protocol with all the defaults here, and now now I'll just have this blank protocol. Well, how do I get started? That'd be kind of nice to use what I had in that other file. And so under the Tools menu, we have the merge command. And so we can merge from an ARM study. Really, I'd like to call it copy from an ARM study, because that's really what we're doing. We're going to leave another file totally alone. So here I've got a protocol in my study list that was last year's protocol, for example. And so we're not actually going to change anything about this protocol, but instead we're going to choose information that's in that protocol to copy into this file I have open right now, which of course is this nice empty one that really doesn't have anything in it. And that's kind of why we want to leverage the merge to fill it with something. So the study list opens up and will show all of the, in this case, it will show all protocols. Since I'm in a protocol, you would also choose a protocol file to merge from. Same thing for a trial. You would, if you're in a trial, you would select a trial to bring information from. So I'll choose that protocol. And now the main utility here of the merge is I can choose which editors or which sections of that protocol I want to copy. So maybe I don't really need to bother with the header because the objectives have changed a little bit. So I have a new title and a new ID for this study, but I definitely want to bring my treatments list. That's going to save me a lot of time because there's not a whole lot different. The protocol description, if we choose that, ARM will, in the next step, ask us which pieces of the protocol description I want to bring in. Well, I'll definitely select that. And then, with assessment data, we can bring in the headers if we want it as well. course, we don't have any data because we're only working in a protocol, so there's no data to bring into. And then finally, study rules can be copied as well. And so kind of depending on the file that you have, this option might be on or off. Really, because I am the owner and I am the creator of that other protocol, as well as the creator of this protocol that's open, I have control and I can choose. Do I want to bring the rules that I had in that protocol? Do I want to bring them into this new protocol? If the file that I chose, that protocol that we're going to copy from, if that was not my own file, I wasn't the one who created it, then this actually gets locked. So that way, no matter what, study rules will come across. So kind of protection, if the study rules were put in place by somebody else, I probably don't have business deciding that I don't want the study rules from that other file. So that's just kind of why that is in place. But here, if I'm the creator of both of the files, then obviously I have full control. So in this case, I'll bring those rules across because those worked well last year, and maybe I just have a couple more to add. So since we had chosen the protocol description, now we can also choose and fine tune which sections of the protocol description do I want to copy. So that can be helpful. Maybe we've got new objectives this year, so I don't really want to bring the objectives information across, but a lot of people are still involved the same. So let's bring in the contacts and the crop description, application details, of course, and maybe my site information. Again, really the key here is I get to choose which pieces come across, whereas like a save as, I have everything and I have to go and find what things need to be updated or cleared out. One more advantage here, ARM is offering to, when it copies things across, if there's any date entries that it finds, should it update to the current year. Again, that protocol was from 2020, and so every reference to any date there is going to be to 2020. So ARM could automatically update those to be 2021 instead. I'm going to say, yes, that is exactly what I want to do in this case, because this is the new year's worth of information, essentially. So we're still in this very same protocol that I had open, but now we've copied in a lot of information from that other file. So like the treatments, now they were empty because there's a brand new protocol. I've got all of the details here that I had in that other file. But my header is still blank because I did not want to copy that information across. Same thing, so the protocol description, this section we did want to copy things in, but the objectives are still blank. So really we can fine tune what we want here. Let's see if we had any date references. Sure enough, so like our issue date in that other protocol would have been March 17th, 2020. Now instead it's been updated to 2021. And maybe I still need to tweak that to maybe it's a week later, maybe it's the 24th or whatever, but at least it gives you a nice starting point. And you can see we did have our study rules came across, assessment headers. Yep, we had some column headers defined and those came across too. So again, that is under the tools menu. The capability here is merge. You would just choose an ARM study. It's really what you're doing. And again, it's really copy from is really what the function is. Can save you a lot of time. Another good use, maybe not for this time of year, but later on, if you have multiple trials at a particular location, the merge can be really helpful for copying like site details into several different trials. So instead of hand entering your soil details into all 5 trials that you're running at this location, you can enter them into trial number 1, and then open trial 2, and use merge and grab just the soil tab of your site description, or whatever that piece of information is, and you can merge, and it will bring in then from that file 1 all of those details into file number 2. The other important thing to note with the merge is that it won't overwrite any information. So, for example, let's use the file guidelines. I'll just create a brand new. We'll create a brand new protocol real quick that's empty, and just discard this. If you have a file, whether it's a protocol or a trial that you've been entering some information into, ARM won't overwrite that information with something different. So let's just say maybe my study design here in this case is alpha lattice, and I'll just grab some different pieces of information. Maybe my experimental unit in this case is going to be something different, like a branch or something unusual. So if you have a file with some information in it, and then we use the merge, we'll just do the same steps to grab that same protocol. And in this case, let's just zero in just on the protocol description and this tab. We will see that it copies in information that was blank, so it'll bring any information into the blanks, but it will not change what I've already entered. So it didn't change this one branch, whereas in my other protocol, it was one plot, was my experimental unit. So if you've entered information in, the merge action won't undo and replace some information you've entered yourself in that current study. That can be a really nice thing to make sure you've got the right details. This copy isn't going to overwrite anything you've already put in. All right, so the last tip I wanted to share with you would be for reporting. And admittedly, that might not be the first thought you'd have, but throughout the season, you do create some reports, even if it's not necessarily kind of the final analysis. And so under the print reports, I have a hidden feature, if you will, that we did point out last time as well in our little Winterize webinar last year. But I want to make sure people are aware of it, because it can be a nice time saver. When you're in the print reports, if you're looking at this blank page and you remember last year that you had worked through some sort of troubles trying to get that spray seeding plan to work just right. And then I finally got the option set just the way I wanted it. But now I'm here and I don't have that report listed. Or I had a nice protocol summary built up that worked really good to print out and send to somebody, or to put in our binder or whatever. And now it's gone. Maybe then after I did that, now I have my analysis report sitting here looking at me instead. There is this set feature where you can save all of the report options that you have as a set, so that way you can give it a name and you can load it again in the future. So if you remember doing that, then of course you can kind of give yourself the pat on the back that you can just go find, for example, your protocol summary, and you can just click that in this list of available sets. And all of those that you gave a name to will be in that list. All you have to do is click on that, and that will load all of the report components you chose, all of the settings that built that, and now you're on your way and you can generate that report again. So that is very useful. Once you do have that list, in order to create this, so that way it's in your list, you just use the Save Set button. And that will ask you to give this a name and saves it onto your computer so you can use and reference it again. Of course, hindsight's 2020. If you didn't know about that and you really would like to, wished you had known that last year, we actually have at the very top of this list of available sets, there's a option button here at the top for previous sets. And so behind the scenes, actually, each time that you press the next button and generated a report in ARM, it actually saved a report set in the background. Now, this isn't the contents of your report. So, any data that you had when you generated the report, that's not being saved here. This is really just the set, the options you chose, and the components of the report that you chose. So in this case, there's a protocol treatments, description, data headers. The last thing I did before that, I generated an AOV means table. Before that, I did a spray seeding plan. So there's a timestamp and the reports that were included. If you did load the report set name, like here's that protocol summary here we just did a moment ago, then that is noted as well. Really, this can be really nice to be able to go back to 2020 and find, let's see, it was spring of 2020 when I made that spray seeding plan. Yep, I bet it was probably the 23rd. You can actually go back and find whatever report that you had set up and created and printed. ARM probably has the options that you had used at that time just here in this list of, again, this was the previous set button in your available sets on your print report. You can go and find that one. I bet that was the one I had generated and say, okay, and it will load that set. Again, just the options and the components that we had, and then you can generate that report now with the current year's information. Probably the best thing to do once you do load that, and hey, this is the one I wanted, now you can hit save set and let's give that a name. This is my spray sheet or whatever you want to call it. Give it a name that you'll remember, so that way next time you need it, it'll just be in that list of named sets that you have created. So that, again, that's the previous sets there to find the configuration, the report configuration, if you will, used in the past. And this has actually been around for a while, so you really could dig back quite a ways. You can see it takes a long time to load mine because I'm generating just gobs of reports when I'm answering questions, but those are 2020, and then 2019, 2018. This will probably tell me when I got a new computer more than when we added the feature. Yeah, it looks like 2018 was the first one that I generated. So it can go back a long ways of just all the different, again, just the configuration, not the data at all, but ARM is kind of keeping tabs on those, so you can dig those up again. All right, so that really is the end of my list for features and tips to show. If there's any questions, something maybe you were hoping I would bring up and didn't, we've got a few minutes here till the top of the hour, so I definitely want to encourage anyone to pipe in. Feel free to go ahead with that. While I let people type, if there are any questions, just a quick kind of highlight of the other webinars. We're trying to kind of create a theme here in March of kind of the beginning of the season actions. And so we have a few more webinars here this month, and I think a lot of you are registered for many of them. The next one coming up is our applications and spray sheet. So actually my example here of generating that spray seeding plan is a nice segue actually. And really that one will be about, kind of hooking up your treatment list to application codes that we have in ARM, just kind of how you document those application actions and link them to a treatment. And then, really focusing on that spray seeding plan or that spray sheet. That's kind of one of the trickier reports. There's a lot of pieces of information that get used to generate that calculated amount of product that you would measure out when you make an application. And so that's one of the trickier reports. I think we get a lot of questions in our support box because for whatever reason, ARM isn't giving me the amount that I wanted, or the amount doesn't seem right. And so we'll just kind of cover those common questions and tips for kind of knowing where to look and making sure you have all the pieces that you need to get that calculation. So that'll be our next webinar next week. Well, very good. I guess I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if there aren't any questions, I appreciate you all joining us today. I'll hang on the line here for a couple more minutes. So if you are still typing away, don't be afraid. We won't turning it off. I guess we do have one here from Carolyn about the data coordinator and subscriber option. So that's a nice kind of tie-in here when we were talking about the migration, I believe. And so kind of the idea here of how do I share some of my product lists and things like that with others in my group. We do have an ability to really automate that sharing. And so kind of what we described today was just this one time here, let me send what I have to another computer. If you're working with a group of ARM users, we have the ability to set up a sync, kind of a syncing folder where all of those lists, those product lists, those SEs, study rule sets, report sets, all of those types of files actually are synced across a group. And so really you would choose what we call them a data coordinator of your group that kind of keeps the master copy. And then what they have on their machine gets copied out to everyone else in the company on a daily basis. So as you're making changes, then everyone else gets those changes as well. And so everyone is all really using essentially the same list and the same rule sets and things like that. And so, that's kind of taking that migration package another step of sharing those pieces of information. It's a really easy thing we can help set up. It really doesn't take too much to do so. And actually, Carolyn, we just kind of helped you guys recently do that. And so you might need to help me, Carolyn, on specifically what you were asking here was being tied into that. It was the migration package that is included in that. I call it a validation list library is kind of what I refer to that whole feature as, just to give it a name. But maybe help me out with what the focus here of your question was, if that migration package is included in that, because it would really it's the same details as what the migration package does, but it is not included there. Yeah, so I guess if you're having some troubles maybe getting people subscribed, yeah, we can work offline with that. Just send me a note maybe on what the trouble is to get people hooked up. Again, essentially, Carolyn is the data coordinator for the group, so we have a certain file that her ARM then copies what lists and things are on her computer out to the common drive that everyone else accesses. And so then we have a separate file that each of the subscribers use to kind of hook up to that. And so it kind of sounds complicated. I usually feel like I'm rambling through a lot of technical jargon as I'm talking through what that does, but it's actually a pretty slick, pretty easy and simple setup. And then, yeah, there's usually a quirk or two to iron out when you're first setting people up. And then usually that's about the last I hear of it in each group. We usually get everyone kind of set up and iron out whatever problem isn't allowing them to sync. And then that's last we hear of it. And it just works pretty seamlessly. So if that sounds like something your group might want, just send us a note, and we can kind of talk through that option. But if that sounds like way overkill for what you need, like we said, just maybe try out that migration package. just if you're the person that's been using ARM for a while, create that migration package out on a network spot or a thumb drive, and then just hand that off to that new employee or whoever it might be, and they can just load that package in to their ARM, which maybe has already been running. Maybe you've got the most experience in the group, but somebody else has had ARM for a little bit. It certainly doesn't have to be only when they're new. Just know that it will overwrite their list. So if you do load and create that package and have it load on another computer, that really just copies all of those list files and replaces them on that computer that is loading the package. But if yours is, or if you have the person in the office that theirs is probably the most complete because they've been here forever in the day, then let's use theirs. I'd much rather have my list look like theirs than what I currently have. That migration package can be a nice way to just real quickly send that over once without permanently linking them. A lot of ways to kind of make ARM smarter and work for you. Okay, well, without any other questions, then thank you all for joining us again today, and maybe we'll be seeing you at another webinar soon. So thanks, everyone.